Hi, everyone. I've got a lap full of kitties, and guess what? We broke through 143,000 subscribers last week. So tell everyone you know to subscribe so we can all have a worldwide champagne party when we reach 150,000. Keep the cats up and they can get in front of the camera and we'll all stay up together for 2 hours sipping champagne, and I'll answer as many questions from you as I can. So if you aren't a subscriber now, please subscribe tonight. Most of you coming to my weekly Earthfiles live streams wonder why this world has not already had official disclosure and confirmation that we are not alone in this universe. So many of you have written about your own firsthand experiences with other intelligences that telepathically communicate that they have been involved with our planet, this solar system, the Milky Way galaxy, and beyond for millions of years. So why should that big truth be a secret? The human family deserves to know the true history of Earth and the true origins of standing up primates and dear animals like Chocolate and Fluffy, who they love to be here for a while, but after a while, I'm going to put you down so I can finish. But look at this guy. Look at how big and beautiful he is. Know the true history of Earth and the true origins of standing up primates from Homo erectus to this current model of Homo sapiens sapien. The human family deserves official confirmation that we are not alone in this universe and that other intelligences exist and have interacted with this planet's history for eons. Even the chairman of the Harvard University Astronomy Department in the past 3 years has speculated publicly that there could be very advanced alien technologies in our cosmos. Professor Avi Loeb, Ph.D., told me that in March 2017 that he thinks it's impossible that the mysterious fast radio bursts that have made periodic headlines since 2007 could be from advanced technologies of, and these are his words, artificial origin. The mysterious fast radio bursts were first discovered in previously recorded data taken by the Parkes radio dish in Australia in July 2001. But because of workloads, those records were not seen by scientists there until 2007. And what researchers found in the Australian archived radio data was evidence of a few extremely powerful and mysterious radio pulses that no one had seen before and no one knew what they were. And those different colors signify different frequencies. Now, 13 years later, with more than 100 fast radio bursts recorded, we know FRBs come from all over the sky and are not concentrated on the plane of the Milky Way. Many have radio frequencies detected around 100 megahertz. A few have been detected at lower frequencies, detected around maybe 1400 megahertz, and a few have been at lower frequencies in the range of 400 to 800 megahertz. The most famous is called FRB 121102. That stands for November 2nd, 2012, when the radio pulse was received at the Arecibo Observatory in Puerto Rico. Its power greatly exceeded the maximum thought possible for what is called the galactic anti-center of the Milky Way. And that is the direction in space opposite to the galactic center as viewed from Earth. From our perspective, that is in the constellation Auriga. FRB 121102's astonishing power was 500 million times the power of our sun, and it lasted for only about 1 millisecond. That is 1,000th of a second. Or, put another way, that fast radio burst released as much energy in 1 millisecond as our Earth's sun releases in nearly 100 years. Since then, there have been dozens more FRBs recorded by Earth scientists coming from the same spot shown here, that is a small, dim galaxy 2.5 billion light years from Earth in that Auriga constellation. This technology to see that dwarf galaxy location of repeating strong radio pulses uses globally distributed dishes of the European VLBI network. That stands for Very Long Baseline Interferometry. And that is when a radio source from light years away can be collected at multiple radio telescopes on Earth. That VLBI network is linked to the 305-meter William E. Gordon telescope at the Arecibo Observatory in Puerto Rico. What's important is that FRB 121102 was not a one-time event. Additional bursts were found from the same sky position with the same pulse dispersion measure. And that meant FRB 121102 was a repeating source. And that meant it survived that huge energy release, whatever it was. Scientists were initially shocked when FRBs repeated from the same place over time. And further, more than 100 FRBs have been officially recorded from different parts and distances of our universe. Even the chairman of the Harvard University Astronomy Department, Avi Loeb Ph.D., told me in a March 2017 interview for Earthfiles.com that it was possible that the intense energy bursts could be related to, quote, advanced speed of light transportation systems of artificial origin, close quote.
These fast radio bursts have very extreme properties. They are extremely bright, much more so than any other source we know. They're very brief, just 1,000th of a second. They have emission that is concentrated around a preferred frequency, while, for example, pulsars associated with neutron stars, they have very broad range of frequencies at which they emit. And moreover, these fast radio bursts, at least one of them, keeps repeating in an irregular fashion. It's not repeating periodically like pulsars do. There are some months where there is no repetition, and then over a single day there are 10 repetitions. So this irregularity in the repetition and the fact that it's not a cataclysmic event, it's not a one-time event, makes them quite unusual. They might be artificial in origin. If we find emission at other wave bands, not just in the radio, that could provide us with more clues about the nature of the source, or if we get more data in the radio and we find some peculiar patterns in the frequencies that are being used, for example, the more peculiarities we find, the more it will drive the discussion in the direction of an artificial origin.
Now, after archiving more than 100 fast radio burst signals from around our universe, this video is an illustration at a very slowed down rate of the strange repeating radio pulses that have occurred in the 1 to 5 milliseconds range and released the equivalent power of 500 million yellow suns like ours. What is it? Now comes the latest puzzling development in fast radio bursts, as summed up in this June 8, 2020 Popular Mechanics headline. Quote, "This creepy cosmic radio burst repeats every 157 days. Where is it?" Meaning all the energy. Where is it coming from? Well, that so-called creepy cosmic radio burst is that now famous 12-1102 FRB that was first seen on November 2nd, 2012. But no one knew about a precise 157-day cycle then? That baffling new information was first published in the July 2020 issue of the UK's monthly notices of the Royal Astronomical Society. The Jodrell Bank Observatory at Manchester University reports that the Manchester scientists discovered each radio burst from FRB 12-1102 lasted approximately 90 days, depicted by the turquoise energy lines between the outer orbit and the Earth radio receiving dish. And then next is silence for 67 days. And after the silence comes more fast radio bursts for 90 days, then silence, and on and on. No one knows how or why such enormous bursts of radio energy would be emitted in a precise, cyclic, and repeating pattern like this. The head of Harvard's astronomy department, Professor Avi Loeb, is also chairman of the Breakthrough Starshot Advisory Committee, where he and other colleagues speculate that FRBs could be, quote, advanced transportation systems of artificial origin, close quote, and that they could travel at or near the speed of light. Some other scientists think fast radio bursts could come from magnetars, fast rotating ultra-magnetized neutron stars that have extremely powerful magnetic fields that can decay and emit FRB-type energy. But so far, no one has come up with a neutron source linked to a fast radio burst. Could it be magnetars? Could it be fast space travel? Well, back here on Earth, while we're waiting for more information to decide, there is new medical information on COVID. It is about a surprising factor now linked to why some people are likely to be hospitalized and even die from COVID-19, while many others have much milder symptoms and survive at home. The news comes from geneticists studying the human genome and finding 2 reoccurring spots in genes that could have the answer. One of those gene spots determines blood types. Having type A blood is linked to a 50% increase in the likelihood that a COVID patient will need oxygen or a ventilator. And this is not the first time that type A blood has turned up as a risk factor in the very severe COVID infections. Scientists in China studying COVID-19 also found that patients there with type A blood were more likely to get seriously ill and require hospitalization. In today's New York Times, Dr. Anthony Fauci told reporter Denise Grady that COVID-19 is, in his, quote, worst nightmare, that in a period of 4 months, it has devastated the whole world, and it is not yet over, close quote. Dr. Fauci pointed out that most easily transmitted diseases can spread worldwide in maybe 6 months to a year. But, quote, Dr. Fauci, this took only about 1 month to do that, close quote. Much of Dr. Fauci's career has been devoted to stopping HIV, which he said, quote, is really simple compared to what's going on with COVID-19. Oh my goodness, he said, where is it going to end? We're still at the beginning of really trying to understand COVID, close quote. Dr. Fauci summed up the many abilities of COVID-19 that medical professionals have never seen before in such a broad range in any other disease. Quote, from infection without any symptoms to critical illness and death, with lung damage, intense immune responses and clotting disorders that have caused strokes even in young people, as well as a separate inflammatory syndrome causing severe illness in some children, such as the Kawasaki-like inflammation that has damaged young children's hearts and even killed. And more waves of COVID are still expected. That's why there is such an urgent need to get a vaccine that will stop COVID-19. Dr. Fauci said he is almost certain that more than one vaccine will be successful and that at least one is expected to move into large phase 3 vaccine trials on humans next month in July. Oh, let's pray. Let's pray hard that it works. Now, remember last week when I shared with you alleged knowledge from a Pentagon military official named Jack, who told Terry Norman, the Chinese medical professional in Mansfield, Texas, that the NASA Apollo program secretly constructed communication towers on the moon to communicate with other intelligences on other planets? Well, recently, I received another email about NASA moon bases from a man named David Sanchez of Riverside, California. David is retired now, but in 2017, he was a taxi driver east of Los Angeles in the Riverside region. He got a call to pick up a man named Dr. Hyneman, and here is what happened.
I picked him up at his apartment complex, and I took him to Enterprise Rent-A-Car. He was going to rent a car, and on the way, he identified himself as a NASA employee, which piqued my interest right away. So I started asking questions. And he was around, I'm guessing, 60, 62 years old. Mm-hmm. On the way, he identified himself as a NASA employee, and I said, "What did you do for NASA?" He said, "I worked on their electronic systems." I tried to see if he would say something about aliens. So I said, "Well, what about the moon bases?" And he said, "Well, I've worked on those too." Well, you just admitted that we have bases on the moon. And I knew about the bases because John Lear has talked about them. Mm-hmm. Dr. Hyneman didn't answer my question directly about space aliens. So I asked him point blank, "Well, what about the aliens?" His next answer was the smoking gun. He said they've been working with us and for us for years.
Did you ask him more?
He said that there were several species already here, and some looked like us. We wouldn't be able to tell a difference if we compared one next to the other. He said they helped us with the development of our laser systems, and that was all volunteered. I didn't ask him about that. But at a certain point, he cut it off. He says, "I can't tell you anymore." And I said, "Why?" And he says, "Because they'll kill me." Which I believe him, because I know they've done this in the past.
Do you remember if Dr. Hyneman said anything specifically about what kind of work he was doing that was related to help from ETs?
He didn't mention anything specifically, but he did say that he had worked on systems directly affecting systems on the Earth and the Moon.
And sort of where I started. Why are we not told the truth? If piece by piece by piece, people, a taxi driver, a Chinese medicine expert, and others who interface with scientists and with military people and with doctors and hear about, we have communication towers, we have bases underground in the moon, that we may have one on Mars already. Why can't we all be told? What in the world is it that keeps this major, huge, defining, revolutionary fact that we're not alone in the universe, and that there are more than one intelligences involved with our planet and the moon and Mars and beyond? Why can't we be told this? And I find this to be, as time keeps going on and more whistleblowers come forward, whether we're talking about huge, gigantic architecture 2 miles under the ice in Antarctica, or that perhaps 550-foot high pyramid made out of dark black basalt like what is in Antarctica, but now is under the Mount Denali area in Alaska. And the information that comes more and more that we already know from deep ground penetrating radar, that there are so many pyramids in the Middle East that have never been seen, and that the whole thing, all of it, is because very advanced intelligences that know how to use spherical geometry, who know how to use mathematical shapes to generate communication and energy on planets from here till who knows where. That we have the power brokers and the space force people who have this information. Why do we continue to have that denied? That is, for me, that is the question that we all need to be asking everyone. Anybody who knows, anybody with power or political or otherwise. Why can we not be told? It seems fundamental to defining humanity at a time that is so revolutionary already, that in knowing this big truth and getting ourselves shifted from being on a concocted planet to one that is more honest and straightforward, like what is happening in the revolutionary aspects of our own social fabric. Boy, if there ever was a time that we should be told all the truth, good, bad, and indifferent, I think it should be now. And on that note, Peggy, I would welcome questions and comments for tonight.
Hi, Linda. First, I'd like to say some thank yous to our super chats. So thank you, Rachel Rizzle and Rocketman56, Jacqueline Merkett, Mike Martin, Harold Vaughn. Thank you so much for your super chats tonight.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, all of you.
We have a first question regarding some of the fast radio bursts.
Yeah.
Have any amateur radio operators who bounce signals off the moon ever recorded any other signals?
It is a very good question, and I don't have an answer. I do not know the answer to that. But I do know some people that in this coming week I can ask, and next Wednesday I'll try to come back with an answer. I would like to know that. But that is not going to be anywhere in the category of the power of 500 million of our suns. Think about that. The sun, multiply it 500 million times. That is the power in these fast radio bursts that only last between 1,000th and 5,000th of a second. It's sort of almost impossible to wrap your mind around what we're talking about in the fast radio bursts, as opposed to something that might be going on in signals from towers on the moon. I understand that you're asking about that and thinking about the fast radio bursts and the huge difference, and that what we might be able to know here, I will try to find out.
Okay, great. I have another question. Someone would like to know, have you ever researched the hollow earth theory? And would you ever consider doing a documentary about it?
Okay, the hollow earth theory, I think, has always been a misconception. Antarctica, you could say, was under the surface of a part of the earth that is ice. And being 2 miles down under that ice would not be on the surface where we have access. So it would be underneath that ice. If you go to the Himalayas, all of the centuries of stories about some kind of other interaction in the Himalaya mountains and in Bhutan and Nepal in that area. But from what I understand and from talking with remote viewers, they are intelligences that can base in a mountain or deep, deep underground, but deep underground might be a mile, 2 miles, 5 miles. And we're on a planet that is 8,000 miles in diameter. At the core of our Earth is a huge, gigantic crystal iron sphere. It is 2/3 the diameter of our moon. It rests at the center of our planet. It is where the dynamo is that creates the electromagnetic fields that have protected us from the sun and from cosmic rays. It's vital. Nothing is going to be living inside of that huge crystal. And when I say crystal iron, it is under so much pressure that it is a different bonding in the atoms of the molecules of that specific iron in that big crystal sphere. That big crystal sphere is rotating in liquid iron that has a little nickel in it. And the sphere is turning one way, and this big liquid around it is going another. And that is what sets up the magnetic fields. When you come out of that huge operation in which nothing is living there, that there is no hollow center to planet Earth. It is filled by this huge iron sphere, 2/3 the diameter of the moon. But when you come out of there and you are into the magma that surrounds, you start getting into channels. We now know from various kinds of ground penetrating radar, there were reports this past year that they've actually found mountains down in the area where we thought it would just be magma. And as you come up and you get, let's say, here where I am in Albuquerque, I'm sitting on a land surface, and it may be deeper. It may be that we'd have to go down 15 miles or 20 miles, because I'm at 6,600 feet. That's where I am talking to you. I'm at 6,600 feet. So I'm in a part where the land is raised, and we might have to go down, let's say, 15, we'll pick it, 15 miles, before we would start getting into the tops of where there could be big, huge caverns. Because we now know that there are cavernous areas that come out of huge gas bubbles that can be between the magma and land, and that could serve as a gigantic, like, cavern cave for something to access. But one thing to keep in mind, if you went around the whole planet on the land areas, the average is only surface down to 5 miles, or I think the deepest is 25 miles. As you go around the planet in where there's land, humans, animals, plants live on that 5 to 25 miles deep. and come back to how wide is the Earth? What is the diameter? It's 8,000. So it's 4,000 miles from the surface where I am sitting right now to the center where that big iron core is. And it may be 15 miles of land and rocks getting down to magma, or a little bit deeper, but 15 to 25 is usually, that's kind of an average. So you can see that we are like a rind on an orange. The part that we have land with separated by all the oceans is actually really thin. So the issue, as I've understood it, having to do with non-humans who have occupied, co-occupied, cohabited the planet with the surface life, and this, look at how much the surface life on Earth has changed over just the last, from 65 million years going back to 140, the whole planet was dominated by big dinosaurs. And we're the latest life, if you want to call it experiment or genetic manipulation, and we've only been around in this particular Homo sapiens sapien form for about 45,000 years. So if you say, what has been all the surface life, and during, let's say, the last 270 million back to maybe 500 million, 3 competing extraterrestrial civilizations have used this planet, harvested this planet, terraformed, manipulated, as well as throughout the solar system. Their ability to be based on the surface or beneath the surface is something that they would do with technology, and it would fit what their needs were throughout all this immense time. But as long as Earth has had magnetic fields, it's had that big crystal iron core at the center, 2/3 the diameter of the moon, in that liquid sea of iron. Thank God it's there. That's what gives us these fantastic magnetic fields that have protected us. And one of the stories that I'm interested in, and will be doing more research, maybe an interview and to share with you maybe in July, is what is happening where there is a decrease in the magnetic field, and there's now more and more discussion about, are we in the century or two that are anticipating that the North and the South poles will change? And it's related now to a new headline about ships at sea that have gone off or something because of something that's happened with the magnetic fields. So always remember that the magnetic fields that you hear about, how important they are to a lot of creatures in terms of navigation, marine animals and birds, that has been here for so long, it ties directly to that enormous crystal iron sphere at the center of our planet. And therefore, when people say that they have a hollow Earth theory, the only hollow Earth area where extraterrestrials, humans, or animals can go is going to be somewhere in that 5 to 15 to 25 miles down on any given area of land of the Earth, or in huge caverns that develop out of bubbles between the magma and that land, or, as I've described before, one other area is that if you go down into the water part of the Earth, and you go down to the very bottom, and you have technology advanced that could take you coring down through the basins, the bottom basins of oceans and seas, that you could come out into areas that might be large and cavernous and that were not filled with magma. It would take other technologies that you and I, the average citizen, don't have access to see if there were spaces under the basins of the oceans. But even then, you're not at the center of this 8,000-mile diameter planet. So, hollow Earth. Don't think of a sphere with something in the center. It's going to be somewhere under the landmass. Before I choke here, I think it's one of my cat's hairs that I just inhaled. So go ahead, Peggy, ask me another question.
One of our viewers would like you to discuss your view on our reality being a simulated one, and they want to know whether or not that frightens you.
Frightens? No. I don't even understand the idea of fear. I think that the holographic universe concept that goes back the first time to Michael Talbot, who was an abductee who worked with Bud Hopkins, and he wrote the book, and I've shared that with you, the riding on an airliner with Bud Hopkins coming back from a conference. I think it was in Missouri, back in, it would have been the very late 80s, I think. And that it was not late 80s, it was because the book itself was not published till 92 or 93, but it was the same month, I think, that the book had been released, so it was the early 90s. And that's when Bud told me that this book that was making impact, and everybody was talking about it at the conference, that this is a holographic universe. And that's when we had the first conversations. If it's a hologram, it has to be projected from another dimension. You can't be in the universe inside us, the universe inside the universe. You can't have it projected from inside. It has to be projected from outside. And therefore, the discussions were, then if Michael Talbot's brand new book were correct, and who would have that ability? It seems that that would be beyond even extraterrestrials. And so Bud, flying back on the airplane, said to me, I want you to know that when Michael was working on this manuscript and he was getting it ready to go to the publisher, he said he finally told me, Bud Hopkins, that the whole book, The Holographic Universe, Michael Talbot, it's 92, 93, you can look it up on Amazon, was from telepathic downloads from the advanced intelligences that were working with Michael Talbot. And Bud and I, on that airplane ride a long time ago, I mean, it was like, wow, what would that mean for everything if this were a holographic universe? Jump to 2020. And more discussions and scientific papers. And in 2017, there were even headlines, new evidence weighing in support that this is a holographic universe. And I've had a lot of time to think about this. And the more I do think about it, the more is the sense that if this universe is holographic, it is deliberately made for a reason. And then go to that big box that we've discussed here before, and that I have talked about in my Earthfiles.com in half a dozen reports, that maybe the big lens to look at this, the big box for everything, this universe could be one of an infinite number according to Stephen Hawking and others. And infinity is a word that is incomprehensible, I think, to the human mind. But that there could be an infinite number of universes. well, what would each of those universes be like, and what would they be for, and why would it have ever been set in motion in the first place? That's why this growing evidence that we're in a holographic universe is so fascinating to me. Because what if the answer is that the divine field that is outside of time, outside of matter, outside of energy, it is a field that is everything. All matter worlds would have grown and evolved because of the divine field. There is this, it's been both a philosophical discussion, it has been the theme of some books, that if there is a consciousness with a capital C, that would be, to me, the one and the same as the divine field. And that consciousness, its coming into existence, that is the huge mystery. But once you are at C consciousness, the divine field, then the concept of an infinite number of universes, an infinite number of dimensions, a huge, gigantic, faceted, incomprehensible series of consciousnesses, that the reason the capital C consciousness would produce any and all of this would be because it somehow is one and the same with the souls. That the souls are the fragments, poets have called them the tears of the divine field. They go out into this complex, ever-evolving, multifaceted series of matter worlds of all kinds, other dimensions, with one goal from the divine field. Will every soul in infinity choose light and love and life over hatred and darkness and death? And that if we knew the whole truth, that there is the ability of something to project a universe with a very specific goal having to do with consciousness and souls. And that when some days we say, why? Why is there violence? Why is there so much war? Why is there evil? How can it exist in the same universe with love and light and evolution that is positive? And in this big story, the answer to those questions is because both are necessary in order for the soul to grow and learn to discern and then willfully choose love and light and peace. And I always feel very calm when I think about that. And I would hope, I said last week at the beginning, I've been trying it on myself because these are really difficult times. It's like COVID is not only threatening us in an existential way, it seems to be pulling off the scabs and showing how much of governments haven't worked and all of the unfairness in what has been happening socially. And it's like this huge, gigantic shaking up and revealing everything except that big truth that I think should be part of this revolution, that we're not alone in the universe and that there's a lot of intelligences and we deserve to know about that. It's all still a part. All of these big, huge things are still facets of being in a universe that seems to be like a university for souls. And a university, by definition, is always one of the last steps in education. So there could be a really wonderful reason if we get a confirmation that this whole universe that we're in is a holographic projection from another dimension, and the whole bottom line for it all would be souls going in and out of containers over and over and over, learning every single possible lesson from every single point of view. And some process either takes it to a place where there is no longer any challenge. And part of me feels like that would never happen, because the definition of consciousness, the definition of being alive, is always wanting to move and learn and go beyond, to see what's on the other side of the mountain, what is at the bottom of the ocean, what is on the moon really, what are the ends of this universe. We're told, even today, that so many things about the beginning of this universe, the so-called singularity, may not have happened the way we've been taught at all. And I find that exciting. I find it exciting that we could be in a universe that is a huge university, and the whole end goal is to get every single soul in every different kind of container out into this entire huge cosmos to learn more, struggle, go round and round, and even find out that the beginning of this universe was not like we were taught. So that's where I'm provoked. Let's see, we've got time for more.
We had a viewer who would like to know if it's true that there's really 40 planets in our solar system, and do you have any thoughts on that being the truth, that there's more than 9 planets?
I have never heard anywhere. See if you can chat out, ask for a source. I have never heard of anything about 40. Let's go to a definition of a planet. A planet has to be spherical. It has to be of a certain mass and size. And this is why Michael Brown, the astronomer in California, who is the discoverer of Sedna out in the Kuiper Belt, who is the one who discovered the perturbations in the comets, that they know that there is something there that is a large mass. And then some people say, well, maybe it is Nibiru, and maybe the Anunnaki, maybe that's the discovery there. But I know that Michael Brown says he thinks this was a binary star system, and that the other sun died, and it is a brown dwarf, and that would explain that huge mass that's perturbing the comets. And it's way out there. It's at the boundary between the Kuiper Belt and the Oort cloud. I think it's a quarter of a light year away. The idea, I mean, just look at our solar system. We all have the ability now to have telescopes and binoculars to be independent on our own and look at Venus and look at Mars and look at Jupiter and Saturn. All of us have that ability if we so choose. And right there, they are the largest round bodies that fall into the category of planets, and Michael Brown, what I started to say is he's the guy who's responsible for knocking Pluto down into one of the Kuiper Belt objects having to do with size. So just by the definition of the word planet, when somebody says it would be a solar system of 40 planets, it doesn't make sense. So I would love to know what the source is for the question and the concept, because we clearly know. Let me add one other thing. When I say clearly know, you have the issue of mass and gravity in every solar system in the universe. And it's the gravity and the mass that determine orbits of objects around also the mass of a sun. You have orbital mechanics that keeps these various masses moving around suns in gravity. And you couldn't, by everything I understand, to have 40 planets around a sun, it definitely doesn't apply to this solar system and this sun and what we already know mathematically. So that's why I'm puzzled. And every astronomer on the planet knows if there would be some big perturbation of something big coming in. And that's why this whole issue of what is that big unseen object out between the Kuiper Belt and the Oort cloud that Michael Brown at the University of Southern California discovered and has been trying to see it. They know the mass is there, and they've been going to Keck in Hawaii and using the infrared there, and they've been using visible light. And they've never been able to see anything, and that's why he thinks it is a dead star. He thinks it is a brown dwarf that is out between the Kuiper Belt and the Oort cloud. It would be very interesting if eventually they find that. But it underscores, I think, that the mass distribution sort of eliminates some of these discussions about could it be Nibiru coming through the solar system. No. Any huge planetary body that suddenly was starting to come through this solar system, it would be immediately known in terms of planetary disturbances far out there, but it doesn't make sense, not in terms of just the science and the physics of solar systems and gravity and masses. So I hope that helps, but I'd just be curious where the 40 planets came from in the first place. Okay, let's go for one more.
Okay, well, this is a question about some of the facts that you know about the moon, and someone would like to know, would you ever considering putting out a book with the facts that you know about the moon?
Well, it might work itself into a book that I'm going to be working on Antarctica, going beyond my documentary. But the moon there are so many books about the moon. And I think that's how I would answer. I'm going to be doing more on Antarctica, and I might bring the moon into that for a very specific reason, but not, at this point, not doing a book entirely on the moon. Hey, that's a short answer from me, so I'll take one more question.
Okay. Okay, so this is a great one. What do you think is really going on? All of these years of research, you must actually have a serious opinion on this. I think it's a very open-ended question.
I was writing today to a colleague I've known for a long time. We were sort of talking about that issue, having to do with, I think, something serious happened in Magé, Brazil. I think that there are interactions that are going on this planet a lot that are at a military level, having to do with perhaps the United States and Australia and Canada and England and New Zealand, maybe our World War II allies in World War II. I think that they have had some sort of collaboration with something that has very advanced technologies, and that you and I and the humans of Earth have not seen it yet. And the question that I was asking and having a discussion was, let's say that the I'm calling it the EB letter. And for those of you who haven't gone to my Earthfiles Part 1 and Part 2 on the Brazil controversy about whether there was a UFO crash and a retrieval, and that 3 tall, they are called beings or entities, not human, were retrieved, 1 killed, 2 wounded and captured, flown back to the United States. It's at earthfiles.com. I recommend that you go to Earthfiles and read Part 1 and Part 2. And it was because of doing that work, and I'm trying to get more and more hard documentation, firsthand testimony about what really happened. But the military, Brazilian military source behind the letter may actually have put some honest content in that letter, which that's what Part 2 is all about. And it was raising the question in my mind, and I was having communication with this colleague. The letter says that the United States military, in collaboration with, but not for Brazil, Brazil contacts the United States to come, and we have bases probably all over along with Brazil. But nevertheless, the page, the letter, indicates that there is a higher authority in the United States on these UFO matters than Brazil. That's what it implies. And that the United States, not Brazil, that's the military force that comes in to deal with a UFO and whatever is in it, and that there may have been a crash, and there may have been a dead being, and 2 that were captured and brought back to the United States, and done very fast, because we really do have this down. We've been doing it for 70 years. But here is the haunting question. If the United States were involved in shooting down a UFO in Brazil, or any place on the planet, it implies, doesn't it, that we have knowledge that would put that in the category of an enemy to be shot at? The very fact that the last 70 years of the relationship of this planet doesn't have to be just the United States, Russia, others. It comes to Len Stringfield telling me back in the early 80s. He was the author of Situation Red, another very important book to read. Len was in the Air Force, and he said, Linda, we had a standing order to shoot down UFOs, and no one will ever know how many pilots we lost trying to carry out that order, and that the families were never told the truth. Why Why is there always this military shoot down, crash, retrieval, bodies theme? What would we know about another intelligence that would put them into the category of an enemy to be shot down? Or why would we shoot down something if we didn't have a clue what it was and why it was here? I'm always puzzled by this constant theme that the military is in violent control of what is happening in the big box of the UFO phenomenon. If we were just told all the truth, maybe we could understand something we don't know now. But I always think it's really important to look at this whole big story through the lens of what Lynn Buchanan said. And all of this is to give you the facets to that question, what do I really think? I interviewed Lynn Buchanan for Phenomena Radio back in, I think it was 2015 or 16. And it was all around a CIA website had released one of Lynn Buchanan's remote viewings, and he was shocked. He thought that the Stargate, the Project Stargate, that he and McMonigal and others, Pat Price, had worked on in Washington, D.C. for a period of time, and they were accessing all kinds of targets and reporting to the CIA and the NSA and the DIA and everybody. And they were right about a lot of things. And he said that he knew that every one of those very talented controlled remote viewers had had tasking. It doesn't mean they know what they are remote viewing. It means after it's all over. And then they all know that eventually they all had taskings on things related to remote viewing other life in the universe. And he said, we all got at least this one concept. Yeah, the universe has a lot of consciousness and life in it. And there are friendlies, there are neutrals, more neutrals than friendlies, and more neutrals than unfriendlies. And Lynn said, and the unfriendlies want to annihilate humanity. I said, why? Why would something else in the universe? And he said he never had an answer. Now, I can say these words tonight, meaning no threat, no knowledge of anything wanting to annihilate. I have no personal knowledge of proof in those three categories. And why I'm comfortable in sharing that is if you go to any of the religious literature in any of the countries on this planet, it's the same theme. A planet, humans are in the dark, don't understand forces that are in competition, and dark versus light, any names you want to put, conflict. The Old Testament and the New Testament are filled with battles and conflict and knowledge about the devil and Satan versus angels and God and Christ as an avatar with others who have come trying to teach us that at the moment of death, there is resurrection. Whether it's been called reincarnation or resurrection, that there is a cycle of life in and out of containers. And in my third book, Glimpses of Other Realities, Volume 2, High Strangeness, I have a huge 106-page chapter through people in the human abduction syndrome. And that is where the drawings from them show what they called the resurrection technology. in which non-humans have the ability to access energy out of body containers and artificially insert into clone containers, and that the abductees were exposed to all of this, and that there is a mixed feeling when you read those 106 pages. You can take it as something that is negative. You can take it as something in which the non-humans are desperate for a certain kind of survival. You can take it that perhaps the soul itself cannot be taken, but that certain energies can be recycled and siphoned off. Either way, it leads to how do you learn, what can you learn that makes yourself strong so that you will not be violated by something that would have technology to access the energy and consciousness of your life. When you start putting all of that together, which I tried to do in Glimpses Volume 1 and Volume 2, it ultimately pushed me hard to come to some place in the razor blade landscape of not understanding why there was always conflict and things that seemed to be in opposition throughout the history of our planet, and implied is going on in other dimensions in which there's dark and light. It used to haunt me. I want to understand this. And if it's not true, why are we being told this? And if it is true, then why aren't we educated more about what is actually in the universe? And I'd like to close tonight on the ground and the peace that I finally found for myself in all of these still push-pull, difficult thousands of facets that seem to surround us as humans on Earth about what is right and what is wrong and what is free will. In a holographic universe that was constructed and projected from another dimension to be the last huge educator of souls, in which everything had to be pitted in conflict in order to learn and choose. I think that right now, in June of 2020, the one question that I feel has the underpinnings of what I once thought might be true and is not, and could relate to the whole huge box of other intelligences is, I'm not sure that there is free will. There is a sense that in this universe, if it is a hologram, if it is a university for souls, and that non-humans with very advanced abilities to move through this universe and move point to point, been here on this planet for millions of years, other galaxies. One guy in the government said there are pyramid structures on solar systems and planets throughout this galaxy anyway. That when it comes to this whole issue of soul finding an alliance with something in the unseen that you know is there, that you feel it, that you have a kind of inner help, I think that my question to myself now, do we really have free will? And if on the other side of that is the answer is no, how could that be and why would it be? Comes back to the concept that this could be a universe of a university, and you have no free will about the courses you're going to have to go through. And if in the end, at the moment of death, is graduation, then anything that happens in this universe was propelling all consciousnesses and all souls toward that. And somehow, when I think about that, I begin to feel that is a bigger, closer truth to what is actually happening. But it doesn't answer why our military would be trying to shoot down UFOs unless they have information that has not been shared. Lynn Buchanan, there are friendlies, unfriendlies, they are the most, and the unfriendlies. So of everything that I've been exposed to from 1979 to 2020, trying to get to the bottom first of animal mutilations and then human abductions and government cover-ups and crop formations and what kind of a universe is this and could we really be in a hologram? I think, even in spite of COVID, which is really, really bad, I think I can look you in the eye through this lens and say, I still feel tremendous excitement, adrenaline, almost like a kid at Christmas. I want to keep learning for as long as I can in this container, and then I expect that I'll be in more and more and more. And so in some strange way, even though COVID is terrible and that we're going through all kinds of stress, I really do feel, honestly, this is one hell of a universe to be in. And it is exciting, and that I pray that we are going to survive our own human conflicts that have grown out of tribal warfare, which has been based in ignorance, that we have been kept unfairly in ignorance by power brokers for their self-serving reasons, probably tied to other intelligences in this universe. But the power brokers that are other intelligences are not the divine field. Hang on to what makes you feel love and kindness and tears when you know that something or someone is being treated unfairly. Think of Fluffy and Chocolate and these dear, wonderful, incredible, smart creatures. I love them, and when I love them, I feel this pressure in my chest, as I do feel for you when I think about you, and that's this world and the letters that you have written, and I know what you have gone through. I feel that pressure. I truly, agape, love you, because we're all in this together beyond COVID. We are in a universe that is so strange that if we do learn, it is a hologram and it is a university for our souls that we can't see, but we can feel. Just take heart and courage there are just millions of people who are asking or would like to ask these questions, and that we're all at least free enough to keep exploring. And there is absolutely nothing that I would rather do than keep trying to open up these various pieces of this complex universe and what is on the other side, quite literally, like just right there, that is going to come, and we're going to be introduced to other consciousnesses. I feel it. It's coming. I do not feel fear. I want it to happen so that we can stop living on a concocted planet. That would be something. Well, let's hope that it happens in the next year or two, but before then, let's have that champagne party with you telling everybody, come for these dialogues together, and let's break through that 150,000 subscriber mark, and maybe we'll do it in July. And maybe there will be a dip in COVID. Maybe there will be a dip for just a while before something else. And that we're going to learn how to feel, get joy, get happiness when we can get it on this planet, and look at the whole rest of it that gets us down as we're in a holographic university for our souls. I'll see you next week.